Okay, you're all set.
All right. Seeing presence of a quorum, I'll call to order this meeting of the Pelham School Committee at 6:30, and we'll start with roll call attendance. Ron.
Menino, present.
Margaret.
Stanzer, present.
Sarah Bess.
Kenny, present.
Brenda.
Barlow, present.
And Hall, present. First item on the agenda is to approve minutes, but I looked back and we have approved some of these already. I think the only ones we need to approve are the February 11th minutes that I blew right over. Is that square with others? Okay. All right, I will take a motion on the February 11th meeting minutes. Or, oh wait, yes, any questions or comments first? Sorry. Mine was just, it says in 5B that we're a ski town, SKI. I think it was a reference to ski, the former name for the Let's Talk. I love that people want to refer to Pelham as a ski town. We are not. So I think maybe we can just do, I think maybe we can just take that out, like that we have a well-rounded curriculum with Let's Talk and an innovative social justice curriculum. That sound okay? Any other comments or edits? Okay. I move to approve the minutes of Thursday, February 11th. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll go with Margaret on this one. All right. Any further discussion? Nope. Okay. Roll call vote. Ron.
Yes.
Margaret.
Aye.
Sarah Bess.
Kenny, aye.
Brenda.
Barlow, aye.
And Hall, aye. All right. Thank you. All right. We just have one public comment tonight. Mike is going to pull that up for us. All right, thank you. Next up is superintendent updates.
Sure, I'll be brief, and Principal Whiting-Jones will give a little more detail. We'll also talk about school choice numbers, which are very promising, thanks to the good work of staff, particularly Principal Whiting-Jones in a bit. So I'm just going to share that it's been incredibly pleasant to be at Pelham. I think 2 or 3 times since school started a week ago Monday, I've been able to be up in Pelham. And just the number of happy faces, and I'm not just talking about the kids, has been just wonderful to see. You know, I saw art deep in the kind of back part behind the library, with some creative work from the art teacher. Lots of kids doing outdoor learning, but also kids inside and learning as well. Kind of the meal delivery and all, seeing that has gone smooth. And perhaps, Pelham always has this challenge of not having a kitchen and having meals delivered. And, maybe we should have thought of this system a while ago, because it's kind of a nice system and working well for Pelham. But, I think the thing I want to share is just how organized it is. I want to really compliment Lee on, the structure she provided for staff members. I've always worried at arrival and dismissal. That's always my fear, and it's been incredibly smooth. And, yes, Pelham's a smaller school, but it also has less real estate in terms of where cars and buses can go. So, I don't think it's any easier than it is at the larger schools in Amherst, because they have, multiple drop-off zones and places where we've been able to have DPWs painted lanes for there. So there's like 2 loops, and that's not possible at Pelham School. So it really complements the staff. But just incredible positivity, and just even my check-ins with staff when I've been there, I'm like, oh, how's it going? And people are really happy to be back. They're really happy to see children. And one interesting comment, which I don't think I shared, I think you broke off from me, Lee, that I want to share, is one of the staff members said, I've been with these kids all year and I'm seeing their personalities in such different ways now that they're in person, that it's as wonderful a job as they did with the virtual, they're seeing different kids. Just because in person, right, we're not 2-dimensional as we all are at the moment, and that's both literal and figurative. So I thought it was a really insightful comment that this person was able to give, and they were able to give details that I won't get into because it gets to individual levels, and Pelham's really small, just about individual students who I don't know, but they were able to cite how differently it was working with them in person than it was in the virtual environment, and just appreciate the thoughtfulness of staff. So those are really the big updates. I mean, there's a number of things in the other items that I'll be talking about, but I think at this point, before we get to Lee, it looks like Ron has a question, if that's okay with you.
Yep, Ron, go ahead.
It's a money question. I read in the Gazette that the town of Pelham got over $350,000 in federal COVID money. Did the school get any money?
We have gotten some funds. It's actually an interesting question, and I'm glad you raised it. We're going to talk about it more when it gets to fall of 21. So right now we're unsure of the stimulus dollars we've gotten from the Department of Labor, the budget department of the state, not the school district department, but the state budget department. We've gotten numbers from Congressman McGovern, numbers from Senator Comerford, numbers from the state, not DESE, but the state, for how much we're getting in stimulus. It ranged from $0 to like $190,000 next year for Pelham. So we have no idea how much money we're getting from that stimulus package. I was on a DESE conference call today. The reason there would be $0 is the federal was based on Title I allotment, and Pelham's not a Title I district. The DESE conference call seemed to indicate that they were going to make some measures to make sure Title I districts receive some stimulus funds in the same way they did with some of the other ESSER funds that came earlier in this pandemic. But really, Doug and I were shaking our heads today saying, how could we get, and this is true for my other districts as well, there's no source that actually has numbers that line up. All 3 of those sources from, U.S. Congressman McGovern, State Senator Comerford, and the state budget office, none of those numbers line up. So we really don't know. But when I do get clarity, particularly as it relates to Pelham, because that swing from 0 to 190 would make a huge impact, I'll certainly let you know by email. I won't wait till the next meeting.
The reason I ask is, if it materializes, could it reverse the voted budget cut for the school?
Well, I think we'd want to talk about that in an agendaed meeting.
Okay.
My own personal perspective, I think I can share my perspective, and then I think it'd be a conversation for the full committee, because I think it's a good one to go on everywhere. We have 3 fiscal years to spend those funds. Ron, we've worked together a while. I think you know what I'm going to say is that I think we ought to think about sustainability over time, and the temptation to reverse budget cuts, I think, is tempting, and we may opt to be better served to use that money over time, because we don't know what the future holds.
Okay.
Yeah, but really good question. I should have mentioned it, so thank you. But I was going to mention it, except Doug and I were, as I said, quite literally, literally shaking our heads today, sitting in a room, just saying, how do we make sense? I mean, the swing of the other districts not as dramatic as the swing in Pelham. And I talked to, actually, I think it is worth mentioning before I turn to Lee, I talked to 2 other superintendents today, also who have small non-Title I ruralish districts, that one of which in particular has districts that mirror Pelham pretty well. They also saw the same swing in the numbers. So something's going on with non-Title I districts and what allotments are coming or not coming to those districts. And we got there's a 4th one. We got a correction from the state, because yesterday they had Pelham getting $600,000, which was wonderful, but seemed not to be consistent with my other districts, which it would be more or less similar to what some of my other larger Title I districts were getting. So I think right now we're waiting on clarity, and when I get that, I'll certainly share with the committee and then eventually the public. But with that, I'll turn it over to Lee.
Thank you. So, some of you have heard me say this feels a lot like September with the great weather we've been having and just getting back into the swing of school. So everybody's tired. At the end of the day, all of the kids are exhausted and kind of dirty. So it sort of looks like they've been at summer camp all day, which is just, it's kind of the staff for us. This is like our dream come true. It's what we've been waiting for a year. And I'll just echo what Mike said. It's been so joyful to be at school. And I have been so pleasantly surprised at how well the kids are doing and how on the very first day, kids were playing together as if they'd been in person and playing all along, which some of them have because it's such a tight-knit community. But 8 days into having students in the building, it feels like remote learning was a really long time ago. So some of the things that are going really well, as Mike said, the specials in the woods have been fantastic. Our art, music, and PE teachers have totally embraced outdoor learning and figured out really innovative ways to help kids build connections to our campus and then also maintain physical safety and teach their subject area. So it's been really fun so far. And it's been great to see kids learning together outside in lots of different ways. So the second graders did an activity where they used sidewalk chalk to make hopscotch boards, and they were practicing skip counting. So there was a hopscotch board that was counting by 4s and one that was counting by 25s and one that was counting by 3s that other students used during the day too. So it's been really nice to just have all the kids back at school. I'm sure you've heard all of the adults in the community saying that over and over, but it's so true. And for our staff to be together, it's felt really, really wonderful as well. March 12th, I think 2020 was the last time they were all in the building together. So it had been over a year, since they were all together. So the feeling in the school is really collegial, really excited. Most of the staff are out at arrival and dismissal, and it feels a little bit like a parade for folks coming in. There's, lots of people waving. Every kid that gets out, 5 adults are shouting, "Good morning!" And it just feels really celebratory. And we have some exciting things going on in terms of our school culture and then curriculum too. So I'll share that this afternoon I was on a call for a science grant that we received for 6th grade curriculum that's going to be rolled out over the next 3 years. So all of the Amherst schools and Pelham are going to be working together on this to implement it's called the Open Sci Ed curriculum. And it's phenomena-based instruction, totally hands-on. It's aligned with the next gen science standards and the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks. Our 6th grade teachers super excited about it. And so that launched today. And then we're continuing on with our anti-racist work too. So our next parent-staff book discussion will be for the book. This book is anti-racist. And we'll be meeting after the break to talk about that book. And the author, Tiffany Jewell, is doing a workshop through the Jones Library this week. So the book is really making the rounds in the community. So hopefully it'll be a good conversation. And then I'll share some school choice updates when we get there in the agenda. But overall, it's just great. Feels really energized to be back at school.
All right, thanks, Lee. Any questions for Lee? All right. Okay, next up is in-person learning update.
So we did some of that, but I'll add a couple more details, which is that we don't have all students learning in person. So we do have some students who have joined virtual classrooms in Amherst. So I think it is worth noting, and I probably should have noted that earlier, that it's not every single student who's from Pelham has come back. It's in the magnitude of 90% of students are back in person, but we want to make sure that those students who are not are being well served. I checked in with some of the Amherst principals who absorbed some students, and it wasn't just like, it wasn't like each Amherst school had one virtual teacher. It's 2 teachers per grade level pretty much across all of them. But they've been welcomed with open arms into those virtual classrooms. So I think that is important to note as well, that we want to make sure we're taking care of 100% of our students at Pelham, and working with our Amherst colleagues has been helpful. I think, just a couple other things that I would share is that we really focused a lot of attention and effort into the social emotional well-being aspect at the beginning of the school. I think the break, it's going to really work, it wasn't really by design this way, but having the first week with the young kids, I think Lee said there was like, I can't remember, 44 kids or something like that the first week. And now it's definitely more full. And then having a break to kind of reassess where we are. I think it's really had a nice flow to it. So I'm glad we didn't push to have everyone back at once, because I think it mattered for the younger kids to have that time. So I think that worked well. And I think what we'll see is a gradual reentry into, a little more of the academic focused work. But I think our staff have done a fabulous job at Pelham of kind of getting students reacclimated to school and acclimated to school in a very different way than they've ever experienced it before, with the desks and the distancing and the level of outdoor time, which is not it's, I think, welcome by most students, but it's still an adjustment. And for students, some students, this was the first time they were in a group in 13 months. And so I think the staff there, and thanks to Lee for her leadership on this, right-sized the approach of absolutely, is there math happening? Yes. Is there reading happening? Yes. But at a core, we want to get students and staff, frankly, reacclimated into a different schooling environment, and then transition that way. The state we are obligated to offer the MCAS this spring. So I know some of the other schools are partnering with Pelham and trying to get information out. We do know that we've heard a number of families who told us they did not want their child taking MCAS. We're not promoting that viewpoint, but it's also, given COVID and all our precautions, we're really going to be trying to know that ahead of time, so that we're not in the moment trying to reshuffle just because of the challenges of COVID. So, but I did want to share that I think the only place in the United States that got a waiver from doing standardized testing was Washington, D.C. Other states who tried to get a waiver, which we did not, were unsuccessful. So MCAS, they did extend the window, and they did shorten the number of sessions a bit. But that is going to be a reality for us this spring, whether students choose to take it or they opt out. It is something that just wanted to be share with the committee, that it's on our radar as a have to. See a question?
Ron, go ahead. You're on mute, Ron.
What are the consequences to the school if a number of students opt out?
So the one thing that we did get as a waiver is that the accountability structure is absent this year. So it's literally just about individual scores. I think today I found out they're going to try to do a growth piece, but there's not an accountability, change that would happen. So schools that were in an accountability profile probably won't leave that, profile. In Pelham's case, where they didn't have an accountability, label, they would not, no matter if students, take the test or opt out.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's different than in the past, though. So it's a good question. Thank you, Ron. And I think the only other thing I want to share is just, we do have about a quarter of the school year left, thereabouts. And we do go pretty late this year. We go to June 25th, given some additional holidays and the later start that we had with the PD days at the beginning of the school year. So that's sort of where we are. And I don't know if, Lee, if you wanted to add anything that you didn't already share before.
Just on the piece about students who are learning remotely, and thank you for mentioning that, our teachers have been fantastic about both connecting with the receiving remote teachers and also setting up regular times for all of the class to connect to each other. So some classes are doing weekly closing circles or special events together so that all of the students can still stay connected. So I just wanted to share that piece. I'm sorry I didn't mention it before. I got very excited about the the outdoor stuff, but yeah, that's happening too.
Yep, and if the committee has any additional questions, we're happy to answer them.
Any questions? I just have, I mean, I guess it's all one question, but is there, I know it has been just a brief time, is there data on like, has anyone tested positive? Have you had to administer COVID tests to people? Have any, like, is there any data on that so far?
Yeah, I can share that. So if there was a positive test of anyone who'd been in the school, whether it's staff or student, we would inform everyone in the community. And since that communication hasn't gone out, from Pelham, we have yet to have any confirmed positive test. One of the things that is a nice system is we do have Binex testing, which is symptomatic. So if someone, a student or a staff member is symptomatic and they're in the school, then we have Binex, which is not a PCR test, but it is a quick test that can be administered on site. I think it's important to note, if someone goes home, they're not like, oh, can I come in for that test tomorrow? That's not what we're not looking for symptomatic individuals to come back in the building. But if they happen to be there, it allows us, it comes back. We have done them throughout the year since we've had kids in some of the other districts. It comes back in about 15 minutes and it's got a pretty high accuracy rate. So that is available. And there was a permission kind of email that went out. And, it also is one that if we didn't get a permission back, a parent can give an oral consent over the phone to be administered by the nurse. So at this point, we do not have a positive test. We have not had a positive test in Pelham. If we do, then we will communicate that. And it's, I appreciate you asking it because it's particularly tricky in Pelham because of the size of the school. I think when we're talking about one of the Amherst schools, which has a couple hundred kids in it, or the middle school, high school at the regional level, again, where there's a couple hundred kids there. So I think it is going to be a delicate balance around that. Our nurses have all been trained in contact tracing, and, the kind of head nurse for all three districts would be kind of facilitating and leading Nurse Katie in that process and supporting her in that process. Thankfully at the Pelham Elementary School, we have 6 feet of distancing. So in the close contact piece is a little bit easier than schools that are like most of the state are at significantly less than 6 feet of distancing. But it's not to say that there wouldn't be close contacts in certain situations. And that's a process we have. So, we do have communication letters. We have used them in some of the other schools throughout the year. And that's the way we would approach things here. But to date, there's been no positive cases in Pelham. We also are obligated to report them to the state, to DESE. And if you follow the news, I think on Thursdays, I believe, Thursdays or Fridays every week, they publish an Excel document of all the positive cases, whether staff or student, by district. And so it would also be publicly reported that way as well.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, Brenda.
I'm just curious if there's been any issues with students or staff or anyone following like safety protocols in the classroom.
I'll defer to Lee on that one. She probably is a little closer to it than me.
So sure, I can speak to that. So far, knock on wood, it has not been an issue at all. So we have some plans in place for what it might look like to respond if that becomes an issue. But all of our classroom teachers are teaching students the safety protocols the same way we would teach any other classroom routines. So really involving students in developmentally appropriate ways. So our 6th grade teacher went through a slideshow that was really similar to what the staff went through, going into some more detail about the health and safety protocols. Our kindergarten class is developing, they have a little phrase, just mask check, for the kids to just, pull their mask up or distance, really using simple language that's developmentally appropriate. And so from what we've seen so far, it's what we had hoped and expected, which is that kids are generally pretty good at following the rules compared to their grown-up counterparts out in the world. And really framing the health and safety as part of our community practices and our community agreements to take care of each other. So far, so good.
All right. Anything else on in-person learning? All right. Town meeting preparation, May 8th. Mark your calendars.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that, as the chair of the committee, if there's a question, I think typically, I'm just saying because we haven't had this conversation with the current committee, and last year town meeting was obviously a different model. But typically, if there's questions, the chair of that would be there. For the regional piece, I know this isn't a regional meeting, but I think offline, I would encourage Sarah Bess or Margaret to have a conversation about if there's a question for the committee at the region, just who responds to that, just so it's organized. I will tell you that compared to all the other town meetings and now town council, I say the least at Pelham, and that's fine by me. We don't often, I think the town is well run, and we don't often come to town meeting with lack of clarity in terms of support of elected officials in the different areas of the town. But just in case there was any questions, I thought it was worth, having on the agenda here. And if not, then, we can move on the agenda tonight.
Yes, I mean, I will certainly be there just on the Pelham School Committee end. So yeah, Margaret and Sarah Bess, maybe we can, well, I guess the three of us shouldn't talk together. But if you guys could let me know what you decide, just so I know. Margaret, last year you crushed it, no pressure, but you fielded all of those questions really well. But I know it can be a long day. So maybe if you guys could check in and then let me know, just so I'm prepared.
Okay.
Ron.
I will be attending my 42nd town meeting.
For real?
I've been here in town for 46 years.
All right. I'm glad to hear it. Okay. All right. That was quick. School choice update.
So I will pass this to Lee because she has some data to share with you that's very promising, and I appreciate the high level of outreach that she has done. We did some different things this year. We got a very attractive ad in the newspaper and some very proactive work by Lee and other Pelham staff members. So I think we have some good news to report.
We sure do. And we have some wonderful videos up on our website, which some of you contributed to, that our PTO helped put together to help raise the visibility of the school. So we had many school choice applications. We had more applications than we had slots for this year. So we had 29 applications, and we didn't have that many slots. So we started sending out acceptances on April 1st. So we sent out 19 offers for kindergarten, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and sixth grade. We've heard back from about 10 of those folks, and we're waiting to hear back from a few others. There are waiting lists in kindergarten, second, third, and fifth. And there's still a few open spots as well. So if all of those folks accepted, looking at the graduating sixth graders and a family we know, a school choice family we know is relocating, it would be a net addition of about a dozen school choice students to our school, which would be wonderful. We're going to continue rolling acceptances through the spring and the summer. I got off the phone with a prospective incoming first grade school choice family this afternoon. And so we're continuing to do outreach. Word of mouth has been really, really helpful. When I asked the parent I spoke with today, I said, how did you hear about our school? They said it was through friends. And so what I've been offering to school choice families, whether they're applying or accepted, is to meet them on campus on non-school hours to show them the playground and walk them around the campus, even though they can't come in the school or tour the building, to get a bit of a feel and to do an in-person meet and greet. So I've offered that to a few folks, and I'll continue to offer that through the spring and summer during non-school hours, just so folks can talk through questions. But so far, it's been a really positive process. So I'm happy to back up, go through any of the numbers, or answer any questions.
Yep, Ron, go ahead.
What is the total number of school choice students now with the recent additions?
Including the prospective students for next year? So I can pull that up for you. So okay, let me just do that math quickly.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. All right, so we currently have 40 school choice students. We are losing 4 of those students who are graduating 6th graders, 2 more as a family who are moving. So that brings us down to 36. We have 1 family who is transitioning from Pelham to school choice because of moving residences. So that brings us up to 37. And then if we added in these 19, that would be 56. It is okay.
Thank you.
Okay, sure.
I didn't want to give you a pop quiz or anything.
I know. No, that's helpful. It's at end of the day, a little mental math is good for me. Yeah, so it would be increasing our percentage of students who are school choice. So right now we're at about 35%. It would be increasing that to closer to 40 or 45%.
Any questions for Lee? All right. I mean, that is great news. And so, I mean, you said that anecdotally you're hearing that word of mouth is helping. Does it seem like other efforts are making a difference? Are there things we can learn about the efforts this year that we could apply in the future?
So one thing that was really helpful was our PTO promoted on social media both our ad and also they held an open Q&A session for prospective school choice families. And that coincided with the weekend that we ran the ad in the newspaper. The PTO kind of elevated that, and then the following Wednesday or Thursday, the PTO met and had that open session, and a handful of families came because they said they saw the ad and then they looked on Facebook and they saw the PTO group. So the PTO has been an amazing partner in helping just elevate the status of the school. So I would really think, moving forward to try and time things in the spring in the same way we did this year with the ad and with PTO, Q&A. It worked really well.
That's really great. Well, yeah, I appreciate the PTO's efforts. And I think especially for that for information like that to be shared parent or family to family, I think can be really helpful. So that's great. All right. Nice job. Any other questions, comments? Margaret.
Another, I guess, a little math problem. So how many students total would we expect to have in the fall?
Okay, so let me just, I'm sorry, I should have had these numbers before for you. So it's a little bit, the number's a little bit hard to predict because we have some students from our community who are in private school or homeschool this year who have told us that they are coming back, but they are not officially re-registered. So we sort of have our official number and then the number that we have in the back of our minds that we think might happen, but we'll probably want to go with the official number.
Okay.
Okay, so currently we have 113 students. 14 of those are 6th graders, so we would be going down to 99. We have accepted 12 kindergartners, plus we have 3 Pelham residents, so there's 15 kindergartners coming in. So that would bring us to 114 plus another 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that would bring us to 121. And then, so we would be about 119 if none of the students who are in private school this year came back. So we would be going up in our overall enrollment by 6 students. But we have heard from some families that they are coming back. So we do anticipate to be our soft number is more around 125 or 120. So that's sort of the number that we're working with when we're projecting for class sizes.
Great. That was impressive math on the fly. I mean, if someone had asked me that question, I just would have closed my video. So good job. All right, anything else on school choice? Brenda.
Just a quick question. I'm just curious. Say you give out all these wonderful school choice slots because we have all these fabulous families wanting to join. And then we have, you know, a Pelham resident who decides to come back to Pelham. I guess, does that mean, you know, there might be some variation in class size because we have to educate the Pelham residents. So is that factored into your decision making?
It is. And I actually heard from 2 folks who just bought houses in Pelham this week, which is great. And they have school-age children, which is exactly what we think of. We always think there could be someone who buys a house in August who has triplets and they want to move in, right? So the guidance that Mike gave me was we fill to 20 and then we stop. Because one of the things that's attractive about our school and that we love is that we have small class sizes. And so we wouldn't want to compromise that to be taking on more school choice students than we would really be able to and still maintain the level of teaching and learning that we do. So none of our classes next year are projected to be larger than 20 students. But we do have some grade levels with really low, you know, smaller enrollment. Our current first grade has 13 students. And so for the viability of the school, that's one grade level, our rising second grade, that we're really hoping to add a few students to balance things out a bit and make it a little more consistent across the grades.
Yep, and I think I was just going to add that this is always the conundrum of uncertainty in enrollment, and this year is obviously a much larger challenge with it. And we know students could, to the point just made, could move in. So we try to balance the kind of financial sustainability we need with also trying to maintain small class size. And that's 20 is about what we think. There's at least enough wiggle if students move in that we have some room there and some space for students without getting to where we'd feel uncomfortable with class. And this is not a COVID conversation. This is a general long-term conversation. There's always the balancing act. I mean, there's been years, and this year maybe one of them in certain grade levels, where if we took every school choice student, we'd have class size that you all and we all would be very uncomfortable with in this particular community. In other parts of the state, people are really comfortable at 25. That's not Amherst and Pelham. And so it's striking that balance that we're trying to do.
Okay. All right, next up, fall 2021 discussion.
Yeah, so there's really 2 parts to this conversation. One is some updated guidance which was shared with you from the Department of Education about virtual option for next year. And then there's also just the more general conversation about the fall. So the virtual option, to make a very, very long memo into the headlines that I think are relevant for Pelham, there's kind of 2 pieces. One is that it has to be district specific. In other words, it couldn't be a combined virtual school experience like we're doing this year between Amherst and Pelham. It would have to be Pelham school specific. The second part of that is it would have to be its own virtual school. So applying for it wouldn't be like, oh, Pelham School's virtual program. It would need a distinct DESE code. It would need an application. We'd have to have a staffing model. We'd have to have a number of students. We'd have to have a principal. It couldn't be Principal Whiting Jones. It would have to be a separate. And school choice students would not be eligible. So in other words, students who were from Pelham, who attending Pelham school who do not reside in Pelham, which, as we just talked about, is a pretty decent percentage of students, would not be eligible based on state regulations. So in short, it's not something we can really pursue. You know, there's not a critical mass of students. There's not the financial flexibility to add staffing, and the school choice piece, I think, just adds inequities, particularly in Pelham, that we can't really look at. So really that leaves us with the option for next year in Pelham to really only offer an in-person option. We can't do any partnerships. And I talked about this in another district that I work for. And, even though it's a larger district, it was the same conversation, just not sustainable. If it was a district, if we had districts that were, together, and 50% of kids wanted remote, yeah, then maybe you can make it work, but not at the degree to which, our families have chosen in-person learning. So I want to pause there and then see if there's questions about, the DESE memo. It was emailed to, it was probably 2 weeks ago. It was a little while ago, and see if there's any questions that you had.
Questions on the virtual piece? Okay.
And so that brings us to the second part, which is that, we plan to be fully in person next year, and some classes may be larger. This year we held to the 6-foot distancing. I think that's, I can't guarantee that for next year. You all already voted a resolution about, going back fully in person next year. So there's no news to this one. But I think in terms of some of the other aspects, I think as we're filling the class and making the school sustainable, it's going to push on some distancing. Luckily, Pelham has pretty good sized classrooms. I don't believe we'll have to be down to 3 feet of distancing. We're not getting that much bigger in our sections. But maintaining 6 feet is not necessarily going to be what we can likely guarantee in every classroom in Pelham School next year. So we won't know exact distancing until we know exactly how many students are coming. And this year worked out really neatly. We've got one class where we are maxed out. If one student comes, we're going to have a different conversation at the school committee level, which we had at the regional level, and we're not able to maintain 6 feet at the regional level. So we can have that conversation. But it would be different than the commitments made this year. So I think as we get more concrete information for the fall, we'll come back and maybe in our August meeting be able to share what degree are we able to maintain distancing next year. Certainly, hopefully the world's in a better place. It may not be in a fully better place, but better than it is right now. I think that's a reasonable expectation as vaccinations go up locally and nationally. But we are planning for an all in-person start and next fall. We don't believe we'll be able to have a remote option. And in terms of distancing some of the other pieces, we'll be back in touch about exactly what that looks like, later this spring or certainly, before our August meeting, before the school year starts. So quick update, but that's sort of the key points for the fall. Actually, I'm sorry, I wanted to take one back. One other thing that Lee and I are talking about is we'll have to figure out what to do with furniture. So we have a lot of really nice furniture that we purchased from some of the CARES Act funds that did come into the earlier conversation. We now have some nice furniture that we're not using that we'd want to hold on to. And frankly, we have some furniture that we'd be happy to get rid of, but easier said than done given procurement law in Massachusetts. So that back classroom, which was used for preschool the last couple of years, was the art classroom prior. We are hoping to see what we're able to do to clear out as much as possible. To be able to use for an overflow or, different uses that we could imagine, even if it's not a full class, because we don't think we'll need that. But it'd be nice. I saw when I was there's even like little nook that someone's using as a breakout corner. So I think, people are looking for, it's like anything else, right? If you have a little bit of space, people will find it and make good use of it because, our teachers are industrious and they want to find solutions. So I think if we can seemingly open up that space as a multi-use space, that'll be really beneficial for fall. So that'll take some coordination and some work with facilities and some procurement pieces that we'll need to work on. But I did want to mention that because I know it came up in private conversation with one of you just about what are we going to do with that space next year. And I think given that so other breakout rooms are sort of awkwardly situated as it relates to ventilation and some other pieces, it'd be really great to have that as a multi-use space next year. So it's a summer project. It's certainly not going to happen anytime super soon, but even seeing this little nook used, it just opened the door, it opened my eyes to how beneficial it would be to have a couple more multi-use spaces in the school. And that's all I had to share. Lee, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Any questions on fall 2021? I guess, can I just ask, in terms of doing the planning for that and all of the scheduling and everything, we would still do that process with the other two districts, right?
It's an open question, I think.
Okay.
I think we could. I mean, some of the things will be the same, like health and safety protocols and contact tracing, right? Those are all district-wide because our nurses work as a collaborative team. Our facilities department works as a collaborative team in terms of sanitizer, but a lot of those things are sort of in place. And I don't imagine, contact tracing is an interesting one because who's a close contact? I know some states have shifted that to be 3 feet. A number of states have shifted that given updated guidance from the CDC. That hasn't happened in Massachusetts yet. So, but those types of things I think would be coordinated with the districts. But I think I don't anticipate, famous last words, but I don't anticipate as much kind of reopening plan. I think we have a reopening plan and we're implementing it. And I think the only shifts that I foresee are really, compared to last year, just around the edges, not full sweeping. All of a sudden we're back at tables and we're promoting students to be next to each other. I mean, students at the elementary level won't unlikely to be vaccinated. Certainly by the beginning of the year at the region, that's going to be at the secondary level everywhere. That's a different conversation. So I think a lot of the same, I think we're going to see a lot of similar things. We're still going to want to be outside. And that's been, I think, had huge positive benefits, not just academically, but just I think it's a good thing for our school. We've talked about that for years. Those who've been on the committee, this was a conversation when I first became superintendent about, could we promote more outdoor learning? So this isn't sort of a new thing, and pandemic forces you into maybe some decisions that we would have liked to have encountered, throughout. So certainly it could be done, but I'm not imagining the same lift as we had last spring and summer and fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. Future agenda planning. So I should have done more homework on this. We need to start talking about the evaluation timeline. Yeah, I should have looked into that. Okay. We typically, when do you usually have artifacts and talk to me about that.
So and the Amherst group, I think Kerry Spitzer is the head of that. So whoever maybe wants to take the lead from Pelham might want to connect with Kerry, because that is something that is, when it can be coordinated between the districts, I think it's worked well, especially this year where the goals were very aligned. So the short story is, I think that's on an upcoming Amherst Regional School Committee sometime in the next couple of weeks. So my recommendation would just be putting it on the agenda for the next one in Pelham and having one person reach out to Kerry and try to align that work.
Okay. Margaret.
I think I'm supposed to participate in that at the region. So if you want me to do sort of loop Pelham in also, I could do that.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. All right. What else would be for May? Any other? Oh yeah, Mike, go ahead.
I think you'll need to reorganize because there's an election before then. I was thinking that the group would meet later in May, so it gives time for the election and all that stuff to play out. So I was tentatively thinking of May 26th, perhaps. But after an election, typically, even if if the incumbents prevail, and I know it's funny talking about this in Pelham, like it's not like, I'm not saying there won't be multiple people running, but it's not like this major election the same way it is for being in
blood will be shed in Pelham. It's gonna get ugly.
On that note, yeah. So we definitely want to reorganize then. But I think we can put superintendent evaluation and then reorganize, and we could definitely meet earlier. I'd be totally fine meeting a week earlier if people wanted to meet the 19th, if they feel like it's getting late on the superintendent evaluation timeline, because that might be, the more I think about it, that might be a little late. And the elections this year in Pelham are
on the 11th.
Okay, so if we met the 19th, that would give enough time for the many ballots to be.
I was going to say, what are you expecting happens in a Pelham election? It's going to be like Florida in 2000. I think the 19th gives us enough time.
So I think, by then we'll know the election and people will be able to be sworn in if there are new members and all those things.
Okay. All right. Committee members, anyone have other agenda items you'd like to throw out there?
If we want, I mean, I can do it during superintendent update, or we can also, if there's an update on the grant, whether that's 0, 190, 600,000 or whatever in between. I think it is a relevant conversation because this one would impact some of the fall reopening plans in terms of how we pay for things that are not budgeted. Like right now we have, CNA and PPE and all these things. So I wonder if we could put that on the grant as well. The grant, the stimulus funds on there just to update the committee and the community because it'll have an impact.
Okay. I think that's a good idea to just have it as an agenda item on its own, unless something changes that it's really obvious and we don't need to. But okay. All right. Anything else on agenda? Okay, I have a few warrants. Okay, I authorized by my signature to payables in the amount of $10,380.16 for the warrant dated March 24th, 2021. And that included general fund expenses that was all general fund expenses. I authorized by my signature to payroll in the amount of $59,039.12. That was for the warrant dated March 24th, 2021. I signed that on March 25th. And I authorized by my signature, I authorized payroll by my signature in the amount of $59,244.65. That was for a warrant dated April 7th, 2021, and I signed it on April 6th. That is all I have for warrants. No gifts that I know of. Okay. All right. I will take a motion to adjourn. From anyone.
I move we adjourned.
Moved by Kenny, seconded by Hall. All right, roll call vote. Ron.
Round I.
Margaret.
Stancer, aye.
Sarah Bess.
Kenny, I.
Brenda.
Barlow, aye.
And Hall, aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good night.